Chapter 1. I met Samuel during an unexpected incident in college. It was the classic suspension bridge effect. He saved me, and I fell for him. That night, on my way home, I was accosted by a thug who dragged me into a dead-end alley. He clamped his hand tightly over my mouth, trying to force himself on me. In the darkness, I struggled with all my might, but it was futile. Tears streamed down my face as despair took hold. "Stop!" A sudden shout echoed from the alley entrance, freezing the man on top of me in his tracks. I turned toward the voice, my eyes widening in disbelief. A figure charged toward us, delivering a swift, powerful kick to the thug. The man who had pinned me down yelped in pain as he crumpled to the side. Before he could fully recover, he scrambled to his feet and began grappling with my rescuer. Shaking, I fumbled for my phone and managed to call the police. At the station, I sat numbly, my gaze fixed on the stark white floor, my heart still pounding in my chest. "Are you all right?" A voice above me jolted me back to reality. Looking up, I finally saw his face. He was tall and lean, his already sharp features now accentuated by bruises and swelling, giving him a strangely comical appearance. I shook my head silently, my eyes catching sight of a metal badge on his jacket. It was the same as my school emblem. Chapter 2. "Are you from Central University?" My voice was faint and trembling as I forced the words out. Noticing that I had finally spoken, he leaned forward with interest, settling into the seat next to me. "Don't tell me, you are too?" I nodded slightly, confirming his guess. When our eyes met, his gaze felt like a ray of winter sunlight, warm and comforting, thawing the chill in my heart. "I'm Samuel Smith." "And you?" "Estelle Miller," I replied softly. No sooner had I spoken than Samuel let out an exclamation of surprise, startling the nearby officers at their desks. "Estelle? You're the student council president, Estelle?" His sudden enthusiasm caught me off guard, and I felt my ears heat up. Embarrassed, I quickly gestured for him to sit back down. Chapter 3. After that incident, Samuel began hovering around me constantly, orchestrating obvious coincidental encounters that anyone could see through, and every time, I would call him out on it without hesitation. My roommates, seeing his relentless pursuit and my lack of response, often dragged me into late-night heart-to-hearts. "Estelle, Samuel's just a troublemaker. Don't let him fool you." Still, since he had saved my life, I couldn't bring myself to chase him away. Over time, I grew accustomed to his presence, and an unnamed feeling quietly began to take root in my heart. One afternoon, as I was heading back to the dorm, I heard someone shouting, "Samuel's fighting again." I hurried to the scene and found him sprawled on the ground, panting heavily. "Why are you fighting again?" I asked, my tone edged with reproach as I took off my jacket and tied it around his bleeding arm. "No reason. I just fight anyone who badmouths you." His tone was casual, but his words thundered in my ears. Chapter 4. Samuel and I got married. In the beginning, we were the picture of newlywed bliss, indulging in all the affectionate rituals of a couple in love. I thought this happiness would last forever, until I saw that text message. "Samuel, I'm back. Can we meet?" The sender's name was Eloan, someone I'd never heard of before. At the time, Samuel was in the kitchen, busy preparing dinner. His phone sat on the dining table, and I was nibbling on the dessert he had bought for me. Suddenly, the sweetness turned cloying, and I lost my appetite. I hesitated, but in the end, I decided to confront him directly. "Honey, who's Eloan Shaw?" "Eloan? Just a high school classmate." "Why?" "She sent you a message." The moment the words left my mouth, Samuel rushed out of the kitchen, grabbed his phone, and swiped at the screen. His expression shifted, and he stared at me coldly. "Did you go through my phone?" "No, the message popped up. I saw it by accident." His abrupt change in demeanor left me stunned. Before I could process what was happening, he had stormed out, leaving me frozen in place, bewildered. After that, he grew distant, coming home less and less. Whenever I asked, he brushed it off, claiming he was swamped with work. Now 9 months pregnant and nearing my due date, he suddenly suggested going hiking. Chapter 5. When I woke up again, I found myself lying in a hospital room, the sharp smell of disinfectant stinging my nose and making me frown. Hadn't I fallen off a cliff? How was I still alive? I tried to sit up but was immediately hit with a splitting headache, and my body felt completely drained of strength. Just then, a group of strangers burst into the room, rushing toward me with a mix of excitement and relief on their faces. "Eloan, you're finally awake. Do you know how worried we were? You scared your mother half to death." The woman leading the group leaned against my bedside, her voice trembling as she called me by a name that wasn't mine. Had they entered the wrong room? When did I change my name? And who were these people? "You're my daughter, Eloan Shaw." Eloan? Wasn't that the name of the woman who had contacted Samuel? Had I become Eloan Shaw? Just as I was about to protest, my eyes caught the reflection in the bedside mirror. The woman staring back at me had a delicate and refined face, with cherry-colored lips, a dainty nose, and skin so smooth and translucent it looked like polished jade. This face was nothing like my own. Could it be? Had I been reborn into someone else's body? The thought sent a chill coursing down my spine. At that moment, a doctor entered the room. The woman claiming to be my mother hurriedly bombarded him with questions about my condition. The doctor explained that I had suffered a head injury, which might cause temporary amnesia. His explanation was the perfect excuse, sparing me from having to reveal the truth. "What day is it today?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "September 15th, the doctor replied. "That was 5 days after my accident." "What happened to me?" "You were in a car accident while returning to the country. You've been in critical condition for several days, but you're finally stable now." Chapter 6. Once the hospital room emptied and I was left alone, I reached for Eloan's phone lying on the bedside table. Fortunately, the device had facial recognition, which saved me the trouble of guessing the password. I needed to figure out one thing: what exactly was Eloan's relationship with Samuel? As I sifted through Eloan's chat apps, I was shocked to discover that she had no idea Samuel was married. She had been completely unaware of his lies and had been repeatedly harassed by him. I scrolled back to the day I had first seen Eloan's message and read the full conversation. "Samuel, I'm back. Can we meet? Eloan, are you finally coming back to me? Wait for me. I'll come to you. No, I'm not coming back for you. I'm back for myself. I want to clear things up this time." What followed was a series of vulgar, revolting messages from Samuel. I frowned as I read through them, my hands trembling in disgust. After that, there were no further messages. She had likely blocked him. But when I checked her call logs, I found an endless string of missed calls from Samuel, all from him trying to reach her. So Eloan was a victim too. Now, though, I had no choice but to use Eloan's body to exact my revenge. I hoped she wouldn't blame me for what I was about to do. Gripping the phone tightly, I unblocked Samuel. "Samuel, I want to see you," I typed, my fingers steady despite my racing heart. From this moment on, I was no longer Estelle. I was Eloan Shaw. Chapter 7. After being discharged from the hospital, I moved into Eloan's home. Her house was a modest villa, styled in European elegance, complete with a small garden outside and a staff of servants and maids at her beck and call. She was every bit the wealthy heiress. To avoid raising suspicion, I had to carefully learn her ways, her mannerisms, her preferences, the unspoken rules of her world. Fortunately, the excuse of amnesia gave me ample cover. I could openly and discreetly observe her personality and habits. Within a week, I had successfully shed the skin of Estelle and taken on the identity of Eloan, rarely slipping up. But to my surprise, Samuel came looking for me. "Miss, someone is here to see you," a maid announced. "Who?" He said his name is Samuel Smith. Hearing that name, my heart pounded so violently it felt like it might burst. My stomach churned, and I doubled over the sofa, dry heaving. "Miss, are you all right?" the maid asked, her voice laced with concern. "I'm fine." "Let him in." I took a deep, steadying breath. I should have felt glad. The fish had taken the bait. Chapter 8. When Samuel saw me, his emotions were unusually intense. He grabbed my hand, and I instinctively stepped back in alarm. "Eloan, are you all right? I heard you were in a car accident." "I'm fine now." "And you? How have you been?" "I've been doing great." Hearing this, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. He had just caused his wife and child to die and now had the audacity to show up here, flashing a radiant smile, as though nothing had happened. My anger bubbled dangerously close to the surface, and I wanted nothing more than to tear him apart. After a few moments of strained small talk, he suddenly pulled out his phone, brimming with excitement. "Eloan, I just got a huge windfall. Be with me, and I'll give you everything you've ever wanted." My eyes landed on the massive deposit displayed on his screen. I was momentarily stunned. Since when had he come into so much money? As far as I knew, he was just a regular employee, and I'd never seen any hint of bad habits or illicit dealings. Where did the money come from? A chill ran down my spine. "You don't need to worry about that. I have my ways," he said, sidestepping my question. He refused to elaborate, and I didn't have a good enough excuse to push further. But one thing was clear, I couldn't let this fish off the hook. "I'll think about it." The longer the line, the bigger the catch. Chapter 9. Samuel suddenly invited me to his office, saying he had something to give me. The excuse was exactly the same as the one he used back in college when he was trying to win me over. That he wanted me to show up at his company so soon was telling. He was eager, perhaps even desperate, to bind me to him. I was determined to uncover the secrets he was hiding. Walking into the company building felt strangely familiar. Back when Samuel often stayed out all night, I would come here to bring him food, only to be turned away at the door. Over time, the security guard and I became acquaintances, but my steps had always stopped at the lobby. Before long, Samuel arrived. He held out his hand, and in his palm lay a glittering golden necklace. "Do you like it, Eloan? If you do, I'll buy you more," he said, his tone dripping with self-satisfaction. Before I could react, the cold metal was already clasped around my neck. The weather was sweltering, yet the necklace felt icy against my skin, making me shiver. I glanced down at the delicate chain resting on my collarbone, and a wave of sadness washed over me. Throughout our relationship, he had never once given me a gift, not even a token of affection. And now, this expensive gesture spoke volumes. He didn't love me. If he didn't love me, why had he married me? I wanted to demand an answer, to confront him here and now. But I couldn't. Estelle was dead. And the dead don't speak. People passing by cast curious glances in our direction, whispering amongst themselves. I looked at the smug expression on Samuel's face, then forced myself to laugh along with him. A clown craves an audience. The more spectators, the greater the performance. Chapter 10. In front of everyone, I ruthlessly tore off the necklace, the clasp snapping with an audible crack. Samuel stared at me in utter disbelief, momentarily lost for words. "Samuel, is this necklace meant only for me, or do other girls have one too?" I asked, feigning a pitiful tone, tears welling in my eyes. That threw Samuel into a fluster. He tried to reassure me, insisting I was the only one, while simultaneously shooing away the onlookers. The scene descended into chaos, and I silently laughed to myself. He wanted attention? Well, now he had plenty. Samuel's face flushed crimson as he muttered, "Just go home," before fleeing the scene. With a casual flick of my wrist, I tossed the necklace into a nearby trash can and prepared to leave. Having not worn high heels in ages, I was now wobbling in Eloan stilettos, needing every ounce of concentration to avoid falling flat on my face. As I approached the door, a group of people came toward me. I failed to sidestep in time and collided headfirst into someone's chest, losing my balance and crashing to the floor. A sharp, searing pain shot through my ankle. This time, it wasn't for show, it genuinely hurt. The person I'd bumped into hesitated briefly, then extended a hand to help me up. "Are you okay?" Chapter 11. The man standing before me had striking features, his refined demeanor amplified by a tailored suit. Surrounding him were several assistants holding documents. He clearly wasn't just anyone. And yet, there was something oddly familiar about him. "I can't stand up." "Sorry," I said, looking at him with an expression of helplessness. The man glanced down at me for a moment, then turned and walked away without a word. "Hey!" I reached out and grabbed the hem of his pant leg. His face darkened immediately, his tone carrying a hint of suppressed irritation. "Let go." "No. You bumped into me, too." "I sprained my ankle and can't stand up." "Why are you being so mean?" Before I knew it, tears spilled from my eyes, unbidden and unstoppable. I hadn't intended to cry, but the flood of pent-up grievances came rushing out. "I'll have someone take you to the hospital," he said flatly. "No way. You caused this, so why should someone else take responsibility?" "Mr. Shaw, should we?" one of his assistants asked, visibly uncomfortable and awaiting instructions. Shaw? That name sounded familiar. Hadn't Samuel mentioned it before? If I remembered correctly, this was their company's president. Fantastic. I'd really stirred up trouble this time. "I'll take her to the hospital myself. The rest of you head upstairs." "Postpone the meeting," he ordered, before leaning down to help me up. "Wait, he's serious?" Before I could even process my regret, he scooped me into his arms and carried me out to the car. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Nothing," he replied curtly. From the car's side mirror, I caught his reflection, sharp features, eyes radiating authority. "It's just you and me now," he said, his tone cool but laced with something unsettling. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just so upset. I stammered, avoiding his gaze and nervously fidgeting with my earlobe. He didn't reply, the tension in the air palpable. Chapter 12. That day, I managed to get his contact information. I pulled a business card from my pocket, the warmth of my touch still lingering on it. Liam Shaw. The name carried the weight of a powerful entrepreneur. As I left the hospital, he said one parting line. "Until your injury is fully healed, contact me if you need anything." I couldn't help but think to myself. Wasn't this a complete attitude shift? He'd seemed so annoyed at first. Lost in my thoughts, I was jolted back to reality by the sound of my phone ringing. It was Samuel. "Hello?" "Samuel, what's up?" "Eloan, come over to my place. I need to talk to you about something," he said, his tone hurried. Before I could ask why, the line went dead. Staring at the call log, an uneasy feeling crept over me. On a whim, I texted Liam Shaw before leaving. "Could you pick me up in an hour?" Feeling like that might be too abrupt, I added another line. "If you're busy, forget it." I had no idea if he would come. I could only hope for the best. The thought of enduring Samuel's cruelty again filled me with dread. Chapter 13. Walking back into this once familiar place, I didn't feel the warmth of homecoming, only fear. It was the same paralyzing fear I had felt at the bottom of the cliff, where I had clung to life as it slowly slipped away. I had lived here with the man I once believed was my forever, but now, there wasn't a single trace of Estelle in the house. It was as if I had never existed. How cruel. "Eloan, make yourself at home," Samuel said. "Okay." He sat across from me, silent, his gaze darting between me and the floor. Then he stood and began pacing, his movements agitated, as though something weighed heavily on him. After a long pause, he seemed to steel himself. Fixing his eyes on me, he finally spoke. "Eloan, there's something I need to tell you. I was married." Feigning shock, I gasped and quickly asked where his wife was. She had an accident. She passed away just a few days ago, he said in a flat, emotionless tone. Then how can you pursue me so soon? What about your late wife? My voice trembled, a mix of incredulity and suppressed anger. I didn't love her, Eloan. I've only ever loved you. Samuel's confession confirmed what I had feared all along, and my heart sank like a stone into icy water. I stayed silent for what felt like an eternity, forcing myself to ask the question that clawed at my throat. Then why were you with her? I don't know. At first, I was just curious, drawn in by something new. But after we got married, I realized she wasn't who I thought she was. She was lazy, short-tempered, and he hesitated before continuing, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. There were times I caught her sneaking out to meet other men. His slanderous words wormed their way into my ears, filling me with disgust. I stared at his moving lips in disbelief, my body trembling uncontrollably. Chapter 14. Come with me, Eloan, Samuel said, reaching for my hand. His eyes shone with what I might once have thought was sincerity. Let's leave this place. I'll give you anything you want. Please, just come with me. I stared at him, my lips tightening into a thin line. Why should we leave? I asked, my voice taut with barely restrained fury. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the kitchen, muttering something about slicing fruit for me. It was then that my eyes fell on a stack of papers weighed down by a random pile of clutter on the table. Making sure Samuel's attention was elsewhere, I carefully slid the papers free and glanced at them. My breath hitched. They were insurance policies. Looking closer, I saw my name listed as the insured, Estelle Miller. And the beneficiary? Samuel Smith. The dates on the policies sent a chill down my spine. They had been purchased 3 months before the day I was pushed off the cliff. My hands began to shake violently, the tremor spreading through my entire body as the pieces fell into place. So that's how Samuel had come into all that money so quickly, by cashing in on my life. The realization was suffocating. My chest heaved, and my throat tightened as though I were being strangled. His voice rang in my ears, come with me. Where to, Samuel? Another cliff? If he could kill Estelle once, he could kill Eloan again. Eloan, come eat some fruit, he called, pushing open the kitchen door and walking toward me. In my panic, I shoved the papers back under the clutter, hastily concealing what I had discovered. Samuel didn't seem to notice anything amiss. He approached me, holding out a slice of watermelon on a fork. Here, try this. Looking at him, I felt a wave of nausea rising. My stomach churned, and I began dry heaving uncontrollably. Alarmed, he reached out to pat my back, but I shoved him away. At that moment, my phone vibrated. The screen lit up with a text message from Liam. I'm here. I need to go home, I said, my voice trembling. Grabbing my bag, I stumbled toward the door. Samuel's hand shot out, yanking me back, before I could escape. I screamed, collapsing onto the sofa as pain flared in my injured ankle. What are you doing? I cried, my voice breaking. Chapter 15. He loomed over me, his heavy breathing hot against my ear as I scrambled backward. Eloan, I truly care about you. Please, stay with me, he pleaded. Stop. I told you it's over, I shouted, my voice shaking. At my words, his face twisted into something monstrous. His grip tightened around my wrist, his knuckles white. I've done so much for you. You're not going anywhere, he snarled. You're not going anywhere. The words sent a cold shiver down my spine, dragging me back to the memory of the cliff, of Samuel's cruel, unfeeling face. Panic overtook me, and before I could think, I blurted out the only name that came to mind. Liam. Samuel froze, his expression flickering with uncertainty. A loud crash shattered the tension as the door was violently kicked open. Samuel barely had time to react before Liam stormed in, his jaw set in grim determination. He crossed the room in a few strides, grabbed Samuel by the collar, and hurled him to the floor. Tears blurred my vision as I looked up at Liam, my body still trembling with fear. "Mr. Shaw? What are you doing here?" Samuel stammered, his voice shaking as he cowered in a corner. He glanced at me, his eyes burning with a mixture of resentment and veiled threats. I refused to look at him. To me, he was nothing more than a rabid animal, desperate and dangerous. Liam said nothing. His gaze swept over me, lingering on my swollen ankle. Without a word, he bent down. Before I could process what was happening, I felt myself being lifted off the ground. Liam carried me out of the house, his steps steady and sure. The faint woody scent clinging to him eased the storm raging in my chest. Chapter 16. I didn't know when it started, but I began to rely on Liam. Even for trivial matters, I would talk to him. Of course, it was always me initiating the conversation. He rarely replied, but whenever I needed him, he would appear. One day, Liam unexpectedly sent me a message. "Who is that man to you?" I looked at the sudden message and bit my lip. "He's a friend's ex-husband." The other side went silent. "He's from your company, named Samuel Smith." After sending that message, I tossed my phone aside and turned on the TV out of boredom. A week ago, a pregnant woman fell off a cliff. The latest update from the police indicates they are closing in on a suspect, and the investigation is ongoing. The screen then cut to that familiar place, stirring up bad memories. My attention was drawn to an elderly woman who had collapsed in the footage. It was my long-lost mother. I clutched my wildly beating heart, my hands trembling so much I could barely hold anything. I urgently wanted to see my parents. Without waiting to change into proper clothes, I hailed a taxi and rushed to the city hospital. Chapter 17. When I hurried to the hospital to inquire about my mother's condition, I was told she had already been taken home by family. I stumbled, almost losing my balance. Who took her? A man named Samuel Smith. Samuel? How dare he show up? Suddenly, the image of the insurance policies flashed through my mind, and my breathing became rapid. In an instant, a strong sense of unease overwhelmed me. Ignoring the calls behind me, I ran towards the street while dialing Liam's number. "Please pick up." Moments later, his cool voice came through. "Hello. Liam. I'm at the city hospital. Can you come pick me up and take me to the insurance company?" Chapter 18. On the way, Liam asked me what was going on. I turned to look at the man driving, feeling a mix of emotions. This matter shouldn't have involved Liam. Reborn, I had no one else to trust and could only rely on him for now. Life is full of gambles, and I was betting that Liam would stand by me. After smoothing out the wrinkles in my clothes, I explained everything to him. But I didn't reveal my true identity or the fact that I had been reborn. I just checked his records. He has a history of gambling. Gambling? When? I didn't know that. Last month. His unexplained absences, sudden change in attitude, the life insurance policies. All these seemingly odd behaviors now made sense. He approached Aloan likely because of her wealthy background. This man's heart was more terrifying than any ghost. I'm worried my friend's parents might be in danger. Liam remained silent, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Can you help me? Just to give justice to the deceased. To give me justice. Chapter 19. Has a man named Samuel Smith been here recently? Yes, Mr. Smith was here today. What did he come for? He was here to take out insurance for his family. My legs went weak, and darkness closed in. I couldn't control myself and started to fall backward. The expected pain didn't come. Liam quickly caught me, his arm tightening around my waist, pulling me into his embrace. Are you okay? His voice was gentle, his eyes unreadable, but his hand was so hot it felt like it was burning me. His handsome face and soft lips seemed to stir something in my heart. I shook my head and stepped back. My heart was pounding. As we left the insurance company, he grabbed my arm, his gaze now firm. "I'll help you." Chapter 20. Samuel Smith had told me to go with him. Now it seemed he wanted to escape before the police caught him. Before fleeing, he would definitely make sure the insurance policies were in effect. I didn't have much time left. I went to the police station and told them everything I knew. The police said, "The evidence we have is not enough to prove Samuel Smith's motive. We can't arrest him yet." "I'll bring the evidence. Please give me 1 day." I had to retrieve those insurance policies from Samuel Smith's house. This meant I had to go back one more time. On the way home, I bought a recording pen. To put him in jail, those papers alone wouldn't be enough. I needed him to confess to the murder. When Liam learned of my plan, his face darkened. "He's dangerous. You can't go." "I have no other choice. He might destroy the insurance policies. I've left the police my number. If anything happens, I'll call them." "I'll go with you." "No, I need you to do something for me." "Tell me." He rubbed his forehead, his brows furrowing. "I'm not sure if he will harm the elderly." "Can you find out where he took them?" Liam gave me a deep look, his eyes filled with worry. But in the end, he respected my decision. Chapter 21. Samuel Smith looked surprised to see me at his door. I walked past him, glancing around the house. Everything seemed normal. But having lived here, I could tell that some valuable items were missing. He was packing to flee. "What's wrong, Eloan? Couldn't bear to leave me and came to see me one last time?" He looked me up and down, his tone flippant. "Samuel Smith, I've decided. I'll go with you." As I spoke, I discreetly reached into my bag and turned on the recording pen. Samuel Smith's eyes widened in surprise, and he stood there for a long time before reacting. "But before that, you need to be honest with me about some things." "What things?" "I don't understand what you're talking about." He poured me a glass of water but avoided my gaze, his tone uneasy. "You can't fool me. If there's nothing wrong, why are you suddenly leaving?" He kept fiddling with the tea set, the porcelain clinking in his hands, making my heart race. Steam rose from the cup, then disappeared into the air. "My family is wealthy, you know that. If you don't tell me, I can't help you." I continued to pressure him. Finally, he couldn't hold it in and knelt beside me, gripping my hand, tears streaming down his face. "You have to help me, Eloan. I killed someone." "Who did you kill?" "My ex-wife." "Who was your ex-wife?" At this point, Samuel Smith stopped talking, his eyes lingering on me, unreadable. He was scrutinizing me. Chapter 22. I suddenly felt a pang of anxiety and asked him what was wrong. Without a word, he snatched my bag. I didn't have time to react, my mind going blank. I cursed inwardly. Damn. Samuel Smith pulled out the recording pen from my bag, his face twisted with rage, his fingers white from gripping it so hard. "You were trying to trap me?" Before I could explain, Samuel Smith lunged at me, his hands around my neck, his eyes bloodshot and terrifying. "You want me in jail? Huh? I trusted you, loved you, and this is how you repay me?" His grip tightened, cutting off my air. The suffocating feeling overwhelmed me like a flood. I struggled to reach my phone in my pocket to call the police, but Samuel Smith's position blocked me, making it impossible to reach behind. I used all my strength to pry his hands off, but the difference in strength was too great. Any resistance was futile. Gradually, I lost my strength, Samuel Smith's face blurring before my eyes. Was I going to die again? In a desperate moment, I saw the ashtray on the coffee table. Summoning all my strength, I grabbed the ashtray and struck Samuel Smith on the head. He fell to the ground in pain, blood flowing. Air rushed into my lungs, and I collapsed on the sofa, coughing uncontrollably. I couldn't stay any longer. I hurriedly picked up the recording pen and the insurance policies from the table and stumbled out the door. I tripped and fell countless times, but I felt no pain. I was ecstatic. With this evidence, Samuel Smith couldn't escape. Not far from the house, I ran into Liam. Seeing my disheveled state, he looked genuinely worried for the first time, urgently asking if I was hurt. I waved my hand, gave him a smile, and then lost consciousness. Chapter 23. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room, the white walls glaringly bright. Liam sat on a nearby sofa, his sleeves rolled up, his hair falling over his closed eyes as if he were asleep. I touched my neck, feeling the bandages wrapped tightly around it. Samuel Smith's viciousness was still fresh in my mind. Thinking about it made me cough, which woke Liam. He walked over and helped me sit up, reaching to remove the bandages from my neck. "Let me change your dressing. Bear with it." His long fingers gently brushed my skin as he carefully unwrapped the bandages. He picked up a nearby ointment and slowly applied it to my bruised neck. The cool sensation made me shiver. He held my neck with one hand while applying the ointment with the other, the close proximity making my heart race. "Where is Samuel Smith?" I broke the silence, ending the intimate moment. "The police arrested him. Thanks to your evidence, he won't escape the death penalty." "And the elderly?" "They're safe at home." I stared at the top of his head, debating whether to tell him everything. Would he think I was crazy? Chapter 24. Liam. I finally spoke. Actually, I'm not alone. I said I'm not named. His hands paused, his breathing unsteady, his eyelashes trembling. "Some of your unconscious actions remind me of a girl I've liked for a long time." He already had someone he liked? My heart suddenly felt heavy, unable to speak. I realized I had fallen for Liam. "Really? What's her name?" I forced a bitter smile, lowering my gaze. "Estelle, a high school classmate." I looked up sharply, finding him staring at me, his eyes filled with sorrow. My breathing became rapid. Could it just be a coincidence? I thought, but my heart pounded. "Which high school?" "City High." In an instant, a sharp ringing filled my ears, something stirring within me, ready to break free. "You're Estelle, aren't you?" He seemed to have already known the answer. Liam grabbed my shoulders, his grip tightening, his eyes red and misty. He was crying. Was I really that important to him? Chapter 25. When did you find out? The first time you clung to me in the car. When someone is tense, their unconscious actions are revealing. I saw the same ones in Estelle. Even I hadn't noticed my own unconscious habits, but he did. Remembering my awkward behavior then, I couldn't help but laugh. Every time we interacted after that, your behavior and demeanor became more like hers, even if you tried to hide it and pretend to be someone else. So you tolerated my antics and helped me because of that? Yes. I knew it. Liam always indulged my nonsense, because he had already figured out I wasn't alone. But I don't remember seeing you in high school. I pressed further. He suddenly fell silent, a blush creeping up his face. We met in the school storage room. You saved me. His soft whisper reached my ears like a gentle spring breeze. Chapter 26. My thoughts drifted back to my second year of high school. The summer cicadas were buzzing, and the scorching heat felt like it was baking us alive. I had just finished organizing the tasks assigned by my homeroom teacher and was heading to the office. Passing by a certain area, I faintly heard a weak cry for help, distant yet near. Following the sound, I found myself at the door of a storage room. The location was secluded, rarely visited. Pressing my ear to the door, I heard intermittent sounds, accompanied by soft sobs. Is anyone there? I knocked on the door, but there was no response. Had I imagined it? Just as I was about to leave, a loud thud from inside made me jump. A sense of foreboding rose within me. Someone was definitely inside. I tried the handle, but it was locked. "Don't be afraid. I'll find someone to open the door," I shouted, running to the security office as fast as I could. When the door finally opened, dust filled the air. He was curled up in a corner, trembling, his eyes filled with fear, surrounded by scattered items. Chapter 27. In middle school, I was very introverted but had good grades, so people often picked on me. I had claustrophobia. When they found out, they would drag me there, trying to force me to cheat for them. In my despair, you appeared. Liam looked at me, his eyes like a spring pond, full of emotion. "But you never appeared in front of me again." I smiled wryly. He said he had a one-sided crush, only daring to watch me from afar. Hearing this, my nose suddenly stung. Samuel Smith. Estelle Miller, who was treated as a money tool, was also someone else's treasure. Chapter 28. The night before Samuel's execution, I went to visit him. He wore a prison uniform, his hair disheveled, looking like a lost beast, his appearance wretched. Behind the dark bars, he tried to bare his fangs at me. "Long time no see, Samuel." I smiled brightly, sitting down slowly. I shed all of Alohan's pretense, revealing my true self as Estelle Miller. He seemed to sense something was wrong, his once fierce eyes now uncertain. "Why are you pretending? Didn't we just meet a few days ago?" "No, it's been over a month." "Stop playing games. I'm about to die. You won't get anything from me." His voice trembled, losing its earlier bravado. "Do you know how much I hated you when you pushed me off that cliff? Are you here to condemn me for Estelle?" I sneered, not answering. "In college, when I encountered a thug, you saved my life. I was grateful. Then you went to great lengths to get close to me, to please me. When I chose to spend my life with you, you mercilessly pushed me off a cliff. Give me back my child." At that moment, I used the fiercest tone of my life, squeezing out each word with all my hatred. Samuel screamed in fear, muttering about ghosts, the chains on his feet clanging as he thrashed. A guard rushed in to restrain him, informing me that the visit was over. As I left, a strong stench filled the air. I turned to see Samuel in a daze, his pants wet, dripping onto the floor. It was a pitiful sight. Chapter 29. One evening, I lay lazily in Liam's arms. "What did you see in me back in middle school?" He smiled without answering, gently kissing my forehead and holding me tighter. Seeing his silence, I pretended to be angry, punching his chest and muttering, "Do you love my appearance or the person beneath? There are countless beautiful faces. Why do you think I chose you?" The setting sun streamed through the window, witnessing our synchronized breaths and heartbeats. I raised my hand, reaching towards the light. The wedding ring on my finger sparkled brilliantly.